Another high-profile Democrat is running for Maine governor. Hannah Pingree, daughter of 1st Congressional District Representative Shelley Pingree, announced her candidacy in front of supporters in Rockland this morning. Keenan Mills was there.
You are the first people in Maine to hear me say, my name is Hannah Pingree, and I am running for governor.
Hannah Pingree has nearly 25 years of experience in public service, most recently as the director of the Governor's Office of Policy Innovation and the Future. She also spent 4 terms in the Maine legislature, with one as Speaker of the House.
I think I have the experience to take on the tough challenges that Maine has, from housing to healthcare to rural economic development. So I think I'm the best candidate because I know how to get things done. I know how to bring people together, but I also know how to fight back.
In Rockland Tuesday, just miles away from her hometown of North Haven, Pingree outlined her main priorities for her campaign, with the biggest one being housing.
Every part of Maine is facing a housing crisis. You know, up in Aroostook County, on offshore islands in the town of Madison, everyone is facing a housing challenge. Whether it's young people can't move back to their community, they can't find an affordable rent, or we have housing that needs improvement. It needs energy efficiency.
She made the announcement surrounded by friends, family, and those she worked with in the past.
Hannah, she doesn't feel like a politician to me. She feels like a real person. She's genuine. She'll look you in the eye. She'll listen to you, understands what you're saying, and she's getting stuff done. She's implementing policy.
Pingree adds her name to a crowded list of Democrats running for governor, including Angus King III, former Senate President Troy Jackson, and Secretary of State Shenna Bellows.
I look forward to a debate on the issues. I look forward to traveling the state of Maine and listening to Maine people. I think we will all talk to voters the best we can. I think we will all talk about the issues that matter to us. And I think my experience working in my community, but also working at the state level, will make me stand out.
Keenan Mills, WABI News, Rockland.